we're seeing it a lot on the left these days, this effort to, it seems like they almost fear a debate because they want to shut down the other side rather than just have both sides interact.
Well, freedom of speech. I mean, it's more delicate. It is more delicate and more under threat than you might think. Now, John Carpe is president of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, and arguably the lawyer who has defended free speech more and more effectively than anybody else in this country. He joins us now from Calgary. Welcome to you, my friend.
Glad to be with you.
Now, we've chatted privately many times. There may even be people out there you don't actually support or agree with, but you believe their views have a right to be heard, and I'm with you 100% on this.
It's the way, the quote attributed to Voltaire, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it, and that's certainly my approach, because when it comes to, for example, students that want to talk about Israeli apartheid, I personally disagree with the whole notion of Israel being an apartheid state. But if people choose to use that language, they should be free to use that. And rather than trying to silence them, we need to counter the bad speech for what it is.
I agree. And if they said they wanted Jewish students to be beaten up, they've broken the law. If they call Israel an apartheid state, I believe that's ludicrous, but they have a right to say it. We've chatted on this show to Peter LaBarbera, and we've chatted about Bill Whatcott. Now, we're not sure. When we interviewed Peter LaBarbera, apparently he was about to be arrested with Bill Whatcott. They were handing out leaflets on a university campus which had offended certain people. They were asked to leave. They didn't leave. And you've seen this probably 100 times.
It's a sad state of affairs where a lot of people, including most adults and certainly including a lot of the youth, people don't understand that in a free society, we have a freedom to say things that are unpopular. And if the free speech applies only to mouthing popular platitudes or vague platitudes, it's not worth much. It's always the controversial speech that people find offensive and unsettling and disturbing. But if you condone the silencing of somebody you disagree with, so for example with Bill Whatcott, his speech is called anti-gay, whether it's a fair label or unfair label, but if you silence that, you're kind of cutting off your own feet or your own nose, because if the
I wonder what you're going to say for a moment there, John. I'm glad you said feet or nose. It was going in a very dark place. Right, let me ask you about this. We do agree, and there are people out there watching now who they're probably very upset with me because I do not like what Bill Whatcott says. I think it's ugly, often grotesque, and counterproductive. But he has a right to say it. And on a university campus, routinely there's material that is being distributed that is very, very scatological and unpleasant. He's not exactly shocking people. If he was doing it at a school with 5-year-old children, well, I think that would be absolutely unacceptable. But these are university students. They're not going to be shocked, for goodness sake.
Well, universities are well on their way to becoming big daycare centers where you have only politically correct stuff that is protected. You raise a good point. It's a double standard or a triple standard, quadruple standard. You can say there are certain things, you're going to be accused of having a mental illness, namely a phobia, Islamophobic, homophobic. There are certain sacred cows which universities will rush in to defend. The whole pro-choice ideology is something that certainly the University of Calgary has through its actions, defended quite vigorously. But there's other things that are not sacred cows, and then the gloves can be off, and the universities say, well, it's all free speech. You saw this with Brandeis University disinviting Ayaan Hirsi Ali, the very prominent and well-known formerly Muslim woman from Somalia, victim of genital mutilation, lifelong advocate for women's rights in Islamic countries. And the university withdraws it. Why? Because she's been called Islamophobic. But you would never hear somebody getting withdrawn, an invitation withdrawn because somebody stands accused of being Christophobic.
I was in the States when that happened at Brandeis, and the ironies there were so multi-layered. A university established for Jewish students who face quotas elsewhere at other fine universities. A university that has still a huge number of Jewish students who would not be allowed to study in any Islamist country, gives a woman, a noble, fine woman who we've had on the show, an honorary degree, and because a bunch of zealots organize that degree is withdrawn. Now, there has been a backlash, of course. Now, I don't know if this is a breaking story or not, but apparently Bill Whatcott has filed himself a human rights complaint because he tried to get his laptop repaired. He tried to get his laptop repaired. I shouldn't laugh. And a computer store said, no, we won't do it because we don't like your views. Now, sorry, guys, you might not like his views, but it has nothing to do with his laptop. They should repair it if they refuse service. I don't like human rights commissions, but I don't think that should be permitted.
Well, I think Mr. Whatcott there is making a valid point. I don't know offhand whether the Saskatchewan human rights legislation also covers political belief or social or religious belief, but if they are discriminating on the basis of religious belief by refusing to serve him by repairing his laptop, then he would have a bona fide human rights complaint. And if people don't like his human rights complaint, I think that makes a good case for seriously revisiting, if not abolishing, that legislation. Because what it really does is it violates our real human rights in the name of some phony rights that
Okay,
that
but
aren't
just
true
let me
rights.
ask you this. Does that mean then if someone is asked, say, to bake a cake for a gay wedding, they have to do it?
I think in Canada, when you look at what happened to Scott Brocky in Ontario,
Yeah.
a printer, he was ordered to print letterhead and stationery for an organization he disagreed with. We're going to keep on getting more and more crazy and offensive.
I'm just looking for consistency here. All I'm saying is if they have to repair Whatcott's laptop, and I think they should, then should a baker in the United States have to bake a cake for a gay wedding? Should a photographer be obliged to take photographs at a same-sex wedding? I mean, it becomes very complex. I mean, suddenly people say, oh, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that. But it's not a question of comfort. It's a question of consistent application of the law, I would believe. John, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Michael.